Hello neighbors, it's Brad here at eTrailer, and today we're taking a look at installing the CURT Trailer Hitch receiver on a 2015 Ford Transit T150. Now this is going to be a 2-inch by 2-inch receiver tube opening, which is going to be great for a van like this. Chances are it's going to be a work van or you're carrying things around, and the ability to add a trailer just means that you're going to be able to tow that much more equipment with you. Now, when putting a ball mount or any accessories in place, you are going to be using a 5/8 pin and clip, and it's not included with the hitch, so you can pick one of those up generally with your accessories. Now, if you're picking up a ball mount, a lot of times those won't come with it. But picking up a locking one is a really nice option too, because you can lock that in place, leave it on here, it's not going to get stolen. So we have plenty of options available here at eTrailer for picking up a pin and clip. Now when hooking up a trailer, you have a plate style safety chain loop, super easy to get your S-style hooks, or even a larger clevis style hook will work well on here. And as far as towing, this one's rated at pretty high capacities. So it's actually rated with a gross trailer weight rating of 8,000 pounds, which is going to be the weight of the trailer plus the accessories loaded on. And your tongue weight, which is going to be the suspended weight that's on here, is 800 pounds. Now, it can be used with a weight distribution hitch, which is going to bump it up even more, and that's going to put it at 10,000 pounds for that gross trailer weight rating and 1,000 pounds of tongue weight rating. But it is important, you're going to want to check the vehicle's owner's manual to see what it's capable of towing and then compare that with the numbers on the hitch. Take the lower of those two numbers, that way you stay safe. Now when choosing a ball mount or accessories, we're going to measure from the center of the hitch pin hole to the furthest point on our bumper here, which is going to be 5 inches. So you're going to want to have one that sticks out a little bit further. That way you have clearance. And something to consider too is if you want your doors to open, making sure that you have the proper height as far as your accessories go. So from the top of the receiver tube opening to the ground, we're coming in at 13 inches, which is a decent amount of ground clearance. Now keep in mind, if you are putting a cargo carrier or suspended accessories on here, as you go up an incline, that's going to want to tilt towards the ground, so just kind of keep that in mind when having those loaded up. Now overall, the installation's pretty simple. You are going to be using 4 of the factory bolts that are already in the frame, and those can fight you pretty well. So just make sure you have some penetrating oil to spray those down to give you a fighting chance. But besides that, it's really simple. You're going to feed some of the hardware in place, which kind of gets a little bit tight on 2 of the holes, but other than that, it's pretty well bolt up in place. So let's take a look at the installation so you can get yours installed. To begin our installation, we're going to need to lower down our spare tire, and it's not necessarily for clearance of the hitch, but some of the factory bolts that we take out are pretty long, and it's going to block those from coming out. So we'll go ahead and get our spare tire lowered down and out of the way. Next, we're going to need to remove the factory bolts that go into the frame rail. There's going to be 2 on each side, and you'll see that there's a decent amount of thread hanging off the other side. I recommend spraying this down with some penetrating oil and letting that sit for a while, because these are exposed to any road grime or just rust and corrosion, so it can make for a tough time, and these are kind of notorious for breaking. So take your time here. We're going to be using a 15mm socket, and we're going to go ahead and get these removed. Now we're going to go to our frame rail, and here by the rear bumper, they're going to have this small, I think they call it a 16-inch hole. This is where our hardware is going to pass through, but obviously we have larger carriage bolts that are going to feed through there. So we're going to need to enlarge this. You can use a 9/16 drill bit to go ahead and get this enlarged. So let's go ahead, get this drilled out. And we'll go ahead and repeat on the other side. So now that we have freshly drilled metal, it's kind of be raw and exposed. We don't want that to turn to rust. So just for a little bit of preventative measures here, we're going to just spray this with some spray paint. You can use clear coat, you can use black, whatever you have. But main thing is just covering all those raw edges to keep them protected. So we have our freshly drilled hole. We're going to be passing hardware through there, but we're going to start by doing this hole that's back here. This is going to be our other mounting point, and we're going to be using a fish wire technique. So what I'm going to do is take this coiled end, feed it through the hole, and then out through the frame rail here. We're then going to take our spacer block. You can just kind of pass that in the frame, and then coil your carriage bolt on that little coiled end there. And then we'll just pass this in, and then leave it like this. Now what I'll do is I put a little bend here on our fish wire, so that way when we put our hitch up, this kind of just snaps in place. Keep your fish wire on. It's going to prevent this from pushing up in the frame. So now for this freshly drilled hole, we're going to feed our fish wire up to the top of this open frame rail here, and then we're going to do the same thing. So we'll feed our spacer block in and then our carriage bolt. Now that spacer block, there is a metal plate in there, so just kind of, you might have to move this around a little bit for it to drop in place, but we should be able to get this in. You might have noticed there's a top little angled piece of metal welded in. It does make this a little bit tricky, so you might need to put a screwdriver on the back end to kind of allow the bolt to feed into the spacer block, because otherwise it's going to be a little bit tall. So you're going to have to kind of get it to where it's sitting in that carriage bolt square, and then just very carefully kind of feed this in. You may take a little screwdriver here to kind of prop that spacer block up, and that's going to allow you to get this dropped in. So just be patient here. Now once you find the proper angle, you'll be able to get this to drop in. It might take a little bit of patience, but we'll get this passed in. Now with an extra set of hands, we'll pass our fish wires through the corresponding holes on the hitch. Now have those factory bolts ready, because when we raise this up, we're going to put them in the side, and that's going to hold this up, making it a lot easier to get the rest of our hardware up. It might be a little tight here. Now it's going to be helpful to put it up over the exhaust first, so raise that side up, and it might get a little bit tight here against the frame rail, but once we have this lined up, we'll just get our factory hardware bolts passed through, and that's going to hold this up for us, making it quite a bit easier. Now it is tight here, so if you need to, you can get a dead blow hammer, kind of hit this up until it's aligned. And then once we have our bolts passed through, just get a few threads started, and that's going to hold it up, making it a lot easier for the rest of our hardware. Now with our hitch in place, we have our side bolts kind of holding that up there. You can go ahead and pull your fish wire. Now you can reach the carriage bolt on this one to hold it in place. The other ones, if you put a little bit of pressure against it when you pull that off, the main thing is you don't want this to pop back up in the frame rail. And then you're going to take your serrated flange nut and just get this started on all of your hardware. So go ahead and you can just get these hand tightened in place. Now we're just going to go back with a 3/4 inch wrench, and we'll get these tightened down. We'll also do the same with our factory side bolts with that 15. So now with our torque wrench, I'm going to just use the torque settings found in the instruction manual. Our 1/2 inch hardware versus our M12s are going to be different, so just make sure you adjust from these to the side ones accordingly. And if you need a torque wrench, we have these available here at eTrailer. You can generally rent them at an auto parts store as well. Now at this point, we have our hitch installed. All that's left to do is get our spare tire back up and load up our accessories and hit the road. And that was a look and installation of the CURT Trailer Hitch receiver on a 2015 Ford Transit T150.